Hi, my name is Ronan Kennedy. I'm a career coach and business mentor, and I thought it would be a cool idea to make some new contacts, reach out to some new people, find out what other sort of professionals do in this strange time we find ourselves in when everyone's dealing with COVID and remote working, all these sort of things. So I've asked Jay to come on a call and to chat a bit about what he does. So Jay, thanks for coming on. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do, please?
Sure, Rona, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's glad to be with you. Sure, I'm here. Obviously, now I should tell you, I'm here in the United States, and I was actually born and raised in Chicago, and then moved to St. Louis in the middle of the country for college. Earned my degree in political science, so the natural next step for me was to enter the career of fundraising. So for the past 20 years, I've been raising funds for various charities in the US, and it's included a balance. It's been about 50-50, working with individual philanthropists as well as corporate foundation philanthropy, which is what I'm doing right now for Gateway Arts Park Foundation.
Wow, brilliant. I mean, that must be very rewarding work to raise money and to help charities and NGOs get their funding, but it must also be really challenging as well, right?
Well, especially nowadays with this with the situation we find ourselves in, especially I would say on the corporate and foundation side, but it's still uh, the reason I've always enjoyed it from day one, I think, and still do it to this day is just that every day is different, and so a lot of what I do, or at least it's what has carried me throughout my career, has been the writing piece. I do a lot of communications. So I think, sometimes people mistakenly say, oh, he's a fundraiser, so he's a salesman. And I'm like, there's a degree of sales, I think, to fundraising, definitely. I won't deny it, but I've really at least approached my career as, there's the written communication, which is more of a storytelling format. So I really look at myself as a storyteller. And there's a lot, obviously, of relationship building, networking, relationship development, and management. And so I do that. So every day is different, and that's what really I find enjoyable. So yeah, it can be challenging at times, but it's also very rewarding.
Yeah. Sounds pretty exciting as well, especially if you're meeting so many different people and you're working on interesting projects. What do you think is one of the key projects or one of the key initiatives or something that you had to raise funds for that really made you prouder?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I had the feeling, and it's a hard one for me, at least. Like I just said, every day's different. So I've really, especially as we're going to probably talk about, like I'm, looking to take next steps in my career. I really started doing kind of some reflection on the past. So it's been humbling for me to see how much money I've raised, like approximating. Just having raised tens of millions over the past 20 years is very
Well,
humbling.
yeah,
But then just to think, then try to start thinking to myself like what I raise the money for. And I've worked for incredible, brilliant organizations, from a Grammy Award-winning symphony here to now I'm working for a national park and the Arch, which everybody around the world knows St. Louis for. So I mean that's humbling in and of itself. But then if you had to ask me in the nutshell, it comes down for me. A lot of the grants I work on are community related or education related, and doing free programs and outreach for people, and a lot of those have been the most rewarding for me.
super. Yeah. I mean, it must be a privilege to get to make such a measurable change in so many people's lives through raising the funds and helping those programs come to fruition, right? And I think it's fascinating where you like it's such a tricky position because you're reaching out to people and you're asking for their hard-earned cash, and there's goodwill being transferred, but there's not necessarily a product or service being transferred. So it's a strange kind of relationships in many respects, right?
Yeah, and I mean, on the corporate side, you have more of the sponsorship,
Sure.
which I do a lot, working with sponsorships, and there's somewhat a tangible, exchange. But I find a lot of the companies, even though they appreciate getting a logo on something, but that's not why they're doing it. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's just your goodwill, as you were saying. So, I mean, it just depends on who you're working with or dealing with. But yeah, I mean, like I said, every day is different. Every donor is different. I've even had times, like we talked about the relationship management piece, I've had times where corporate contacts have really become personal friends and acquaintances. And so they really become individual donors more so even than corporate donors. And that's awesome though, because that carries you, through time. You can carry those relationships, build those relationships. And so I enjoy that piece as well. It kind of,
Brilliant.
you never know where one relationship's going to take you.
Yeah, brilliant. No, that sounds so cool. Do you think you've noticed an increase in corporate social responsibility over the last like 10 years or so. So companies becoming more interested in how they can have a positive impact and contribute to communities or to their countries or to causes close to their heart. You know, companies like LinkedIn, for example, would contribute to increasing jobs, but or you know, helping people get into jobs by understanding their platform and so on. Do you think you've noticed an increase in that sort of activity?
Definitely, I think, and a lot. Corporations are interesting too because so many of them have not just. I'm working. Oftentimes, I'm working two different connections at a company. So there's companies a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times have their marketing piece, their marketing division that you're working with, and or I'm working with their foundation piece. So you'll have a lot of these private corporate foundations that are specifically designated, for a specific purpose. And a lot of times those are the ones that are pushing more toward community change or, community impact. And then you have the marketing piece where so sometimes even working with both. I have a marketing rep that I'm working with and I have a foundation rep. And you're pulling those funds from both. But, obviously one wants more the logo
Mhm.
component or the logo, front facing component of
Yeah,
sponsorship. And then you're dealing with the other one who really wants to see those,
yeah,
fundraising is very much driven by impacts and
yeah,
data and metrics and all the buzzwords that we hear about. And
yeah,
so
yeah,
those,
yeah.
it's interesting. That's been interesting too, because you see more and more of that, I think. And so you're kind of juggling two relationships within the
Quite a
one. So,
balancing act, and
yep.
probably an element of diplomacy is required to keep all the different stakeholders happy, right, and keep them all
Definitely,
engaged.
yeah. And there's a lot more relationship management. And you're also dealing with the calendars and the solicitation. When one ask goes out doesn't necessarily mean when the other one goes out. So yeah, it's interesting. But definitely we appreciate the support as fundraisers.
Keeps you busy, I'm sure, as
Yeah.
well. So, Jay, you're also interested in Ireland, isn't that right?
Yes, yeah, it definitely. Last year, 2019, before all the madness, thank God, I've been thinking about what would have happened if that was this year. So luckily I did last year, but I finally lived out my lifelong dream of visiting Ireland. I'm not Irish,
Yeah,
so there's that. It's always been a special place for me, and something that I always dreamt about doing. So last year I finally, took the opportunity, visited it there. And it was just interesting while I was there. This is the personal piece for me. While I was there, it felt very much home for me. It was I can't explain it. So I don't know if it was just because so long you have this anticipation of doing something and then you do it. But when I was there, it felt like I was home. And so then when came time for me to leave and come back here, I felt like I was leaving home. It was a very surreal moment for me. And
yeah.
so after that, I guess my dream shifted. Since I achieved that dream, my next dream became I need to go there permanently and, make that happen. So now that, yes, that's kind of where I've been looking over the past year plus, has been looking to make a move there.
So if you could make a move here, if you could find a role here, what sort of like let's say if someone's watching this, what sort of role would you be interested in doing if you could get one here?
Honestly, it's hard, you never want to seem indecisive, especially probably talking with someone like you. You're probably like Jay, be decisive, but it's hard for me to say because I never want to close doors, and I'm open to a lot of opportunities. Like we were talking earlier about what I do. Every day is different, and so one day I might be. A lot of times I'm writing, so I'll say that. So I love writing, and that's where my creativity spills out. I think, as well as forming sponsorship contacts or relationships that way. Um, but then other days it's the relationship management piece is top of mind. Other days I've even helped, in various roles in different ways, but I've really helped develop programs and then manage programs from the ground up. So I mean, I hate to typecast. It was like I was saying before about how, I don't think fundraisers are just salesmen. I can do sales, obviously, so that's another opportunity I'd be open to, but I like to think I like to believe I have a lot to offer, bring to the table. But then also, I also like to think I'm a great value for a company or an organization in that I can juggle many different things and wear many
Mm,
different hats, so to speak, as the old adage
that's
says.
great,
I wouldn't just say I'm just a salesman. So
great.
I
Well,
think
it's
a
great.
lot of the organizations I've worked for, I have found that.
That's super. Well, it's great that you have flexibility in the skills that you're offering from, you know, whether it be, you know, client relationship management or sales or communications or fundraising. I mean, it's nice to have that adaptability and be open to helping businesses or helping NGOs or other organizations solve their problems in different ways. And that's what we need at a time like this, right? We all need to be a little bit more adaptable. So I think that's great. You know, you'll be adapting to a culture, if and when you come here and adapting to a new organization, and you probably have to understand the way we speak because we tend to speak a little bit differently to you guys over there.
No,
More or
and
less.
it's exciting for me though too to think about not just the new life experience personally is exciting, but really for me it excites me to have a whole new marketplace.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of what I would try to do, probably no matter, especially for a nonprofit organization, if I worked for one, would be to hopefully transfer some of my network over, leverage my network here for there and bring new investment there. But then just experiencing a whole new marketplace and getting to know all those new people, that is very exciting for me. And it doesn't scare me at all. I think some might feel like, oh my, like, what are you going to do coming to a brand? Like, that's just, it's all that whole new experience of new relationship. But that's very exciting for me.
Exciting, something to embrace, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, Jay, if people are watching this and they're interested in having someone like you who's driven, who's hardworking, who's got good relationship management, fundraising, strategy, all these type of key skills at this moment, where would you like them to reach out and contact you? Is LinkedIn messaging the best place, or email, or phone? What works best for you?
Sure, all of the above. LinkedIn's probably one of the easiest. You can send me a in-mail on there. I appreciate any new connections, new suggestions, whatever it is. I always appreciate any folks reaching out. So you can do it on there. You can also shoot me an email.
So don't hesitate to reach out, right? Even if it's just to touch base or to have a chat on the phone, because sometimes people get nervous if they don't necessarily know if they've got like, the perfect reason to reach out. But is it okay if they just reach out to you and touch base?
Oh, definitely, definitely, yeah. And like I said, I might talk their ear off, but I appreciate any any new connections are appreciated. So,
That sounds good. That's great. So look, thanks so much for having a chat with us today and for sharing some of your experience today. And we would all welcome you here for a pint of Guinness when the time is right.
oh, definitely. Now you're speaking my language, Ronan. So thanks for having me.